Good evening and welcome to the Township Committee meeting for the Township of Chatham, Thursday, May 11th, 2017. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 6, 2017. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the Municipal Building on January 6, 2017, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 6, 2017.
Thank you very much. Would you please stand for the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Karen is home this evening recuperating from surgery. She sends her regards to everyone, and she is watching us live right now.
Mayor Ritter?
Wish you the best, Karen, in your recovery. I'm here, obviously. Motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've got a proclamation this evening. It's our friends from MAC. I don't know if you guys want to come on up and say a few words now or after the fact.
What's your choice?
Let's do it now.
All right, so I'm Kelly Loofborough, the current coordinator of the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams, and I just want to thank you very much for continuing to do this resolution and proclamation every year over Parents Who Host Lose the Most. We were recently at a Prevention Network conference, and Governor Christie and a Harvard-trained doctor were both talking about the need for any substance now to really just delay onset until someone is 25 years old. The science we know now is so different than we've ever known before, and we can see the huge difference in the neurodevelopment of kids who delay any kind of substance addition to their body until you're 25. So thank you for prioritizing this, and I also want to say thank you for bringing the opiate forum to the town on the 24th, and I hope community members all come out to hear it.
Okay. I would like to thank the council for
Vince, you want to-
keeping our campaign going. What's that? Oh, my name is Vince Fiorito with the Municipal Alliance Committee. Again, I'd like to thank the mayor and council for keeping our program going. This is our 9th campaign, our 9th year, and hopefully it's making a difference. And we also have the police department in the township here who does put our banners up in front of their facility on Southern Boulevard. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Stacy?
Just here for moral support.
Very good. Well, I'll read the proclamation and we'll do our photo op. It reads, whereas adults who provide alcohol to those below the legal drinking age of 21 are placing those youth at risk for health, safety, and legal problems. And whereas alcohol use by young people is dangerous not only because of the risks associated with acute impairment, but also because of the threat to their long-term development and well-being. And whereas it is illegal to give or allow your teen's friends to drink alcohol in your home, even with their parents' permission. And whereas anyone found guilty of providing alcohol to youth could face up to $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail, in addition to any civil action that can be brought as a result of the damages or injury related to the offense. And whereas adults have the authority and responsibility to our youth to provide them with alternative opportunities by creating alcohol-free activities. And whereas Drug-Free Action Alliance, through the Parents Who Host Lose the Most, Don't Be a Party to Teenage Drinking campaign, provides the educational materials to raise community awareness regarding this illegal and unhealthy practice. And whereas the Township of Chatham encourages residents to refuse to provide alcoholic beverages to underage youth and to take the necessary steps to discourage the illegal and unhealthy practice, including the reporting of underage drinking by calling their local police. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Chatham not only discourages the use of alcohol by those below the legal age of consumption, but also exhorts all residents of the Township of Chatham to refuse to provide alcoholic beverages to those underage youth, and will continue to take the necessary steps to discourage this illegal and unhealthy activity. Now therefore I, Kurt Ritter, Mayor of the Township of Chatham, State of New Jersey, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2017 to be Parents Who Host Lose the Most. Don't be a party to Teenage Drinking Month in the Township of Chatham. So thank you very much for all your work. For Mac, I know Mike is our representative, and we get some good updates, and you guys do wonderful work on behalf of our community, so we appreciate you guys for doing what you do. So if anyone has any other comments?
No.
Thank you. All right, we now have a presentation from the School District of the Chathams. Mike Lasusa, the superintendent, will be giving a presentation. Solo, I don't know, or by yourself, or? Okay. There you go.
We have a board member on the way, but his son had a problem.
I wonder which board member that is.
As soon as he arrives, I'll get the hook
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
and take the microphone.
There you go, Mike.
We'll be done in no time. Time is bad.
You want the wireless mic?
Either way, it's fine.
Okay, so thank you very much for having us tonight. As I just mentioned, one of our board members is on his way, but was at his son's lacrosse game, so he'll join us as soon as he arrives, and I'll get the hook, and he can kind of take over. And a special thank you just to you, Mr. Ritter, for spearheading such sensitive and important issues that do touch the district, especially in the areas of suicide prevention and substance use, because we actively deal with issues revolving around those two unfortunate areas, and we really appreciate having someone take a leadership role and help fight the good fight. So thank you. So we're here to provide an overview of the school district budget for the 17-18 school year. We've skinnied down the presentation a little bit from what we've been doing at our board meetings in the interest of time, and you can feel free to ask questions at any moment, and we'll try to give you the best answers we can. So we've been focusing on three primary forces that are affecting and shaping this coming year's school budget, and they have to do with state aid, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, enrollment patterns, and then health insurance costs. I've been taking the opportunity, or taking advantage of the opportunity, I guess, in speaking to various groups from our PTOs to Borough Council, Township Committee now, to talk about state aid a little bit, because this is different, I think, from how municipal aid is doled out. School districts all across New Jersey, the 583 or so school districts, receive aid according to a formula enacted in 2008 called SIFRA, the School Funding Reform Act. And SIFRA distributes aid based on the enrollment, meaning just the sheer size of a school district, and the student demographics of that school district. So principally, school districts that have large numbers of students who are learning English as a second language receive more aid. School districts that have greater numbers of poor students or economically disadvantaged students receive more aid. And then there are some other weights and factors in the formula. But the bottom line is that SIFRA is the law, and all the aid that goes out, the direct aid to school districts, is supposed to comply with SIFRA. The problem is that when the financial crisis hit back in around 2009, the governor took extraordinary measures in reducing aid to school districts, and at that point abandoned SIFRA. And SIFRA has not been funded or run at all since then. And some folks just throw up their hands and say, well, that's the way it is. But that fact for the past 8 years has disproportionately affected districts like us because our enrollment has grown, unlike in other districts where they've experienced enrollment loss. So I'll just illustrate that a little bit, and the projector's a tiny bit low, but this is our state aid, what our state aid has looked like over the past number of years. But essentially, the big bar, 2009-10, was the last year that, or was the only year that the School Funding Reform Act was run and that there was an attempt to distribute aid according to what the formula called for. So in 2009-10, we got about $3 million of aid. Then we had the terrible financial crisis, and we lost over 80% of our aid the following year. The next couple of years, the state made efforts to ratchet up aid distribution to try to approach the amounts that were in place in 9-10. So we had 2 years of growth in state aid, and then of course for the last 6 years we've been essentially dead flat. Last year to this year we are the same dollar amount as the prior year. On a per pupil basis, it looks like this. So of the $13,500 roughly that we spend on a per pupil basis according to the state, only about $475 of that comes from the state. The rest of it comes from the taxpayers in our communities. Now, there's a misconception among some folks that the fact that state aid has declined and has been flat on an aggregate amount affects all districts the same way. And that in fact is not the case. So this is a slide. I took all of the K through 12 school districts in Morris County, looked at their aid, and I know it's a little hard to see, in the 2009-10 school year, and then the aid that they are receiving at the current time, 17-18, and then just the difference, percentage difference in aid received 8 years ago versus aid received today. And what you can see here is it might make sense that Dover is getting more aid because Dover has grappled with issues involving their demographics that we don't grapple with. But you look across or down the line, every school district in Morris County, many of them affluent, as affluent as we are, like Mountain Lakes as an example, the relationship between the aid they get today and the aid they got 8 years ago differs. And there is no rhyme or reason to this. So we're sort of at the bottom of the pile. Not at the very bottom, but we're toward the bottom of the pile. And for us, unlike in some of those other districts, our enrollment pattern has just gone up pretty much every year for the past decade. So when you put what our enrollment has done over the past decade versus what has happened with our state aid, you can see that there's been a gap. That gap largely has been bridged by taxpayers, but it's also put a lot of pressure on our school district budgets. Now, comparatively, what's sort of most interesting maybe is that these are the enrollment patterns, the enrollment growth or decline in every one of those school districts on this page, all of the K through 12 districts, Morris County. This is what their enrollment has done since 2005, 2006. So if I go back, you look at Roxbury. Roxbury's enrollment has gone down more than 10%, I think over 15%, since 2005-06. You go back to this chart, though, and you look for Roxbury. Roxbury's aid is down 6%. Looking at Randolph on this chart, Randolph, okay, down about 10%. Randolph is the third line from the bottom here. So they've lost enrollment almost at the same rate that they lost their state aid. The blue bar at the top, that's Chatham. That's Chatham's growth compared to all K-12 districts in Morris County, meaning we've had by far the most enrollment growth. In other wealthy districts, so I took the old DFG classification. The state doesn't do this anymore. They've abandoned this, but up until recently, they classified districts according to socioeconomic status. There are 9 school districts in New Jersey that have a K through 12 configuration. There are J districts. That's the most affluent. Again, Chatham is off the charts compared to those districts. The point being, we've had really a tremendous amount of enrollment growth, and that has stressed the system. Looking at it just a slightly different way, the school district was formed in the late 1980s, about 1988. If you look at what our enrollment has done just on sheer numbers and percentage basis since that time, the 25 years there, enrollment has skyrocketed, and I just plotted based on the U.S. Census data the population growth in Chatham Borough, Chatham Township. So it just gives you a feel for how unusual our growth, our population growth has been over time.
Mike, if I may, so if you go back. So essentially, a 10% growth in the population rate overall in the town, but a 100% growth rate in the kids in the school system.
Yes.
So are you attributing that to larger families? Where is that coming from?
I've looked at these numbers. I can't believe it when I look at it. You know, it's just remarkable. And I've gone back and looked at the Wikipedia and the U.S. Census 5 times to make sure I'm not reading the screen the wrong way, and I don't know how to account for this. Obviously, there's a lot of building around town even now, and we see the families parading through our offices right here on literally a weekly basis. So even this year alone, when we started the year, we had 4,189 students. I only know that because I was writing a newsletter at the time in August, and right now we have 4,235. So even during the school year, we've gained 40 kids. So, Matt, you can feel free to take it away from me anytime you want. Our illustrious Vice President of the Board has joined us. In terms of health insurance, so those are the first 2 factors, is state aid and enrollment. On the health insurance side, we have negotiated a number of containment strategies into our various agreements, including the one with our teachers. But despite that fact, we are being hit with a 14% increase in health insurance as we move into next year. With the health insurance increase comes a waiver to the 2% tax levy cap. We have banked cap available from last year. We did qualify this year for some enrollment waiver. And so the total levy increase with the available bank levy cap and the health benefit cap and the enrollment cap would be about $700,000 or 3.2%.
What type of containments are you doing for the health insurance?
Last year, we obviously all of our employees are part of Chapter 78, Tier 4. Last year, with our teachers group, and now this has continued with all of our other smaller units, the association agreed to eliminate the upper tier health insurance plans that some employees had been eligible for. So right now, every employee is able to take advantage of a POS plan or a high deductible plan. And we've incentivized them to go into the high deductible plan, though very few have. But there's a single base plan that is probably similar to maybe Direct 15 in the state employees health benefits plan. And then we have some other incentives to try to get people into the high deductible.
Are all the co-pays and the like, is that all by contract? I probably should know the answer to this, but...
There's an equal to or better than provision in the contract. So yes, those are all of the benefits package is laid out and needs to be negotiated.
Drug plan as well?
Yes. So for comparison's sake, we have our POS plan is our base plan. We have a high deductible plan, and the state employees health, if you look at the costs, we're still below the state employees health benefits plan. This number is as of May 1st, so it doesn't include the 14%. Part of the reason I put this slide in is just to show that we're approaching state employee health benefits plan pretty rapidly. Obviously, state employees health will go up again January 1st. But it's another consideration for us whether or not we continue to be privately insured or we move to state health and attempt to negotiate that into future agreements. This is cut off a little bit. Sure, Mark.
Yeah, 2 slides. Go back 2 slides. So if you see on that, what Mike was trying to show is what we were allowed to, under the law, to tax without going to the public for a second question, which was when you add in our 2% plus the secondary figures of the health benefit waiver plus the enrollment waiver, we could have gone as high as 3.2% without having to go to any form of second question or any kind of vote. So as you know, up until 2 years ago, we held an April election. We decided to change that, and we moved to basically in line with the balance of the towns in New Jersey. I think there's only 4 or 5 towns that still have an April vote, and we moved to the we no longer hold a vote in terms of the budget for the Board of Education. So what we've done and how we look at this from a perspective of how we go through the finance and how we move towards our final tax increases, the number one thing we do is the cognizance of the fact that there's about 60% of the homes in this town do not contribute kids to the school system. So it's an amazing figure as you look at that from an enrollment perspective, that with just 40% of the homes contributing kids, we still have had that phenomenal amount of student growth. The one thing that we need to be cognizant of is we don't peak as a school system in terms of how we forecast and how we look at enrollment trends until 2021. So we still have 4 or 5 years of enrollment growth according to our figures. And I think that number, based on expectations, is right in the 4,280, somewhere up in that high 4,200 numbers. So we still have enrollment growth, and from a perspective of what we've thought we were going to be versus where reality is, we've always been wrong, and we've been wrong with the fact that numbers are higher than we had expected. So this town is enjoying the success of being the #1 school system ranked for the last couple of years. I believe a lot of people coming from the city now go right to Google and they look up what has the best school system in New Jersey, and this is why they're looking here in Chatham, just as people are willing to spend money for their children's education. So with that, Mike, you can move forward too. We proposed, you can't really see it under there, we went forward with a 2.95% tax increase for 2017 and 18 versus what we could have done, which was a 3.2% figure. So if you look at it from a perspective of across the spectrum, basically your baseline budget, which is a 2% figure, which is the guidelines that were created under the Christie administration, the max we could have spent of 3.2%, and the figure that we proposed at 2.95%. So what we've done here on this slide is we indicate what that means on a monthly basis and an annual basis based upon what is the average assessed value of the homes in the borough and the township. So from a perspective of the borough, against this 2.95%, we will see an average annual increase against that assessed value of $280, and in the township, an average increase of $258. And then you see it on the bottom, which is basically looking at it from a simple perspective of $100,000 in assessed value. Thanks. So amazingly, I kind of forget these days of the massive tax increases that were approved by the town of an 8.2% and a 7.6%. I think those are the two that before I came on Board of Education. And then you can see that the significant downtrend, and then the impact of, in 2011, I believe is when they put in the cap of 2%. But of course, you see above 2% because there are those indicative waivers of the healthcare side as well as enrollment growth. So you see through 2012, 2013, Mike, I'm not quite sure if the 14, did that include the second questions? So that includes second questions. So we had a baseline figure, I think of like 2.5 or 6%, and then we went to the public with a second question to add to the operating revenue line for the school district of the Chatham. A couple years that was security, some other, I forget what they are going back, on the STEM years and stuff like that. So 2015-16, that 1.8% was after the referendum, where we had told everybody when we moved forward is that if we we're going to go forward with the referendum. We were going to do our best to do as a low possible increase, with the fact that it's going to be doubled up with the referendum increase as well. The way we look at it from a budgetary perspective is we look at, from the primary question or primary tax increase, is basically to keep the lights on, to keep status quo with what we have right now from a curricular perspective, from a people perspective, to what we believe right now are figures that deliver the best education in New Jersey. If we're going to go and ask for up and above that, we can go to a second question, which that second question does go to the electorate, so it's their decision and vote as to whether or not they want to accept that higher tax increase. We think that's the proper thing to do. We basically went public with this 2 years ago, saying this is how we're going to look at our tax increases, how we're trying to maintain and control expenses in town, which is every annual tax increase keeps the lights on. Anything above that, we're going to make sure that the public has a say in raising taxes above where we are legally allowed to do that. So you see the trend, that 2.3% this year to 2.35% last year, and then the proposed 2.95%, which is basically going to happen. So we've seen a significant decline in tax increases and over the last number of years, and I really don't see a world of where we would ever or could ever go back to an 8.2% or a 7.6%. First of all, we are not legally allowed to do that based upon the 2% caps. The waivers will never get us there, and I could never see, honestly, if we went back to even a voting system where the public would accept those kind of tax increases anymore.
John, could you re-explain the formula that you just described of when you would trigger the second question? If I understood, did I understand you correctly that the 2% plus the waivers, which in this year would have brought you up to 3.2?
Correct.
That if you had exceeded 3.2 in this example, then you would feel that that's where you'd trigger a second question?
We would. And it basically, we have always said that we are going to keep the tax increases as low as possible. And if we feel a need, or if there is an urgent need, or if there is a demand from the public that we need to go higher than that, we basically want to say, we want to put it in their hands. We want to make sure that they're involved in the process of making sure that if we're going to go to a 4% tax increase, even though we're at 2.8, which is where our figure is, they're going to have to vote on that 1.2. So we want to make sure that they have a say, and the public has a say, and everybody in this town has a say when we go to a larger tax increase than we're allowed to by state law. So, this year I could have, we kept the lights on at 2.95. We could have gone to 3.2 without asking the public, without a vote, and used that number towards some of their operating expenses in town, but we chose to do our best to take that below what we're allowed to do.
And is that a voluntary decision on your part, or if you had exceeded the base plus the waivers, would you have been obligated to go to?
Well, it's an obligation. But you have to, if you could go above that 3.2%, you have to go to a second question.
You have to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Matt, if you can go back to the previous slide.
Yep.
Thanks. So I'll take a little opportunity to gloat because for the committee and the former committees. So if you put the municipal side by side here and looked at the tax rate in a different perspective in mills, et cetera, you'd see a little bit of an increase, you'd see a couple of decreases, but what you would see at the end of the day is the same tax rate in 2007 as you would right now. Essentially, we've had no tax increase, and we've lowered taxes the last couple of years. A lot of people will claim, and I take exception to this because I don't think it's accurate, but they claim it's because, well, they see the tear downs and they see the houses being rebuilt. You took down a $700,000 house, and now you have a $2.5 million house. Obviously, your rateables are going up. You're able to do that because of the rateables. I don't buy that argument, but for the sake of that argument, if it's good enough for us, why isn't it good enough for you? Because you're getting that portion,
No, we're not.
portion. Well,
We're not getting any of the revenue, though. Our budget, the 2% is based only on the prior year tax levy.
Okay,
And it's not based on any additional revenue that comes in to the community. So I would play the other way. When we have a tear down, like we have probably 10 within 100 feet of this building, the people who move into those homes often have multiple children. The children come to the school system, but we don't see $1 of the increase in whatever that home is assessed at now. Our budget is pegged to the prior year tax levy only. So we get no remuneration or dispensation for the increase in the assessed value of that home and the tax revenue associated with it.
But you would say it's catching up to you. You're a year rolling behind all the time, but.
It never, no, it never catches up, because our budget is based only on the prior year tax levy. What happens is the 2.95% doesn't result in a 2.95% increase for every homeowner, because there's a bigger pool now. So the 2.95 might be in reality 2.78 or something along those lines. But we never get any more revenue.
If we go, if I would look at it, maybe I'm wrong, but you can correct me here, but if we go from a perspective of, say, that a house that contributes $20,000 in taxes gets torn down, the next year contributes $40,000 in taxes, that $20,000 in taxes goes directly to the municipality. We don't see a reflection of that tax increase in what we would charge that house on a per unit basis, right? So say our baseline for that house is $20,000, and the next year it contributes $40,000, we don't get an increase. We are still consistent at that $20,000. No, it does, no, but that doesn't, that money doesn't flow to us, that flows to the town, right? So if it's, we don't see
It catches up to you. My point is it catches up to you. It might be a year behind.
Look at it like this. So the local tax levy last year for the school district portion of the tax bill was $60,147,138 between the township and the borough. The 2% is based only on that. It doesn't matter how much other, value there is in the two towns. It's based solely on that. Next year, it will be based solely on this number. And it doesn't, for us, we don't get any other revenue that is associated with growth or increased revenue in the municipalities.
So say that $20,000 figure, right? And 75% of that $20,000 figure goes to the school. So that house contributes $15,000 to the school on this budgetary perspective. If that next year goes to $40,000, we don't maintain that 75% take of those tax ratables, right? We are still at that $15,000 figure as far as I can tell. I don't think, we don't see a percentage increase based upon the ratables at that point, right? We have a consistent figure of what that house is contributing, right? We don't see an automatic percentage of that increase all of a sudden then flow into our budget.
I'd have to defer to Tom on that.
Right, so that, that on a percentage basis, our contribution of that house would go from $15,000 to $30,000. As far as I know, and as far as I can tell from where we value these things and the money flows through, is that we don't see a percentage increase and take a percentage increase of that increase in ratables.
Well, I can tell you one thing, we're not getting it all. I don't know where it's going, but
The county's getting it.
we'd be paving every road in town if we were.
The county and the library.
Yeah, So anyway, but go ahead.
Oh, you, Matt, back.
Can you, Pete, you want to put that back up? So again, we're back to, if you look at it from a comparative basis from a school tax levy, we compare ourselves to some of the greatest school districts in New Jersey, and you look at it on a per pupil basis. You look at how we educate kids versus our competitive towns across New Jersey. So in Princeton, the per pupil tax levy, 21,000, we are at 14,000. So we are 33% below what we believe is our peer, one of the members of our peer group. And our peer group is, I think that's the next slide, Mike, who we call are these are the J districts? This is county, I'm sorry. So there's two things that we can look at it from a county perspective, and then what's the J district. The J district comparison would be against what they perceive as the best schools in New Jersey. That's where Princeton and West Windsor and all these other towns are in. So if now, again, you look at it from a perspective of where we sit in the county, we go from Boonton, you want to push that up, lift it up? Boonton at the top there at a 17,641 figure, down to Chatham at 13,657. So as you know,
What explains that difference, Matt? I mean, do you have
in honesty, we have, at that, and if you go back and if you look at it from a historical perspective, the way this school district has been managed from a financial perspective is just better than everyone else. We have kept a tighter ship than everyone else. And you have to go back and look, 10 or 15 years. There was, I would imagine if you go back and look where we were doing 8%, other towns were doing 12% and much higher figures. And
Is it a function of declining enrollment than others, and ours is increasing?
is that part of the
It's both.
denominator is changing?
It's both things. So when New Jersey first started really limiting what the tax levy increase could be, it was about 2004. Many other districts had had more robust budgets than Chatham did. So it's a function of frugality over time and then changes in enrollment. So ours, even if our tax levy increase is 2 or 3% and it's on par with other districts, if our enrollment is going up at a faster rate than they are, then the per pupil cost goes down. Yeah.
So again, look at it from perspective of what we can deliver on a declining per pupil percentage because of our enrollment growth versus other towns that have significantly more dollars per pupil and what we're delivering from a finished good perspective. And it's most interesting against the county average where we are, what is that, about 10 or 11% below the county average. As you know, we did the referendum that passed all of the questions. When we went through that, we did receive a AAA rating from the S&P for those bonds. As they went out, those bonds did price, I believe, below our expectations in terms of average yield because of the demand for the bonds. That was priced these were rated in January 2017, but the placement was, when was that, February? 2017, so with the AAA rating, which is pretty good. I'm not quite sure if you've been following the Star Ledger over the last couple of weeks and looking at some of the districts in New Jersey having significant budget shortfalls. Lakewood had a $14 million budget shortfall. Parsippany Hill had a $3.5 million budget shortfall. I'm not quite sure what that is on a percentage basis, but there are a lot of stressed districts in New Jersey right now that are having to cut significantly. The numbers at Lakewood, even though the Board of Education turned it down, was the prospect of cutting 128 positions within their school district. So
This is fixed or floating rate debt?
that's fixed. It's fixed, right? This is, I don't know if we want to go through this whole thing. This is just the overview of the revenues and the expenditures. Basis the budget's the 2% figure, the 2.95 in the middle, and then 3.2% on the right-hand side. As we talked about before, we really didn't make any changes to the budget. As we talked to, we try to just keep the lights on. We did add one counselor at the high school. Again, we are seeing a significant increase in enrollment. We have a large 8th grade class coming in. We're bringing in a class of around, I think, 375 and lopping off a 325 class. So there's a significant enrollment growth. And then we are and have approved the Board of Ed to put an addition onto the high school to house our Board of Ed offices. This is a project that we've been looking to do for as long as I've been on the board. This is a project that we think is essential to continuing the better administration of the school district. As you know, we've had a facility up in front of the high school that was dilapidated and basically condemned, that we had to move the special ed office out and up into this facility on a temporary basis, which has opened us up to some other issues that we needed to address by adding this facility. From our perspective, it addresses this very specific needs of a lack of professional space, industry security protocols in terms of where we house the paperwork associated with the special ed, which has significant rules and laws behind it and how that needs to be stored. What it does, it also allows us to, and positions us from a construction perspective to add classrooms to the high school if we need it. So the way that this piece is designed, it would be very simple for us to add a second floor, to add it, I think, how many classrooms could we potentially add it there?
6 to 7.
6 or 7 classrooms. And again, it does reduce some operating expenses for us. If you look back over the last couple of years, what we've been able to do without tax increases, we've added 11 classrooms at the high school, and now we're adding this space. We've traditionally done that by using capital reserve numbers. Here we're using $2.1 million plus the excess surplus of $500,000 to construct this. We've also done significant capital investment projects based upon a energy program that we did with Honeywell, where they did a number of capital investment projects that we pay back through the operating side, actually pay back through the savings associated with all the improvement projects that they made. Which is, so in essence, we were able to do those probably when all said and done, Pete, around $10 million in capital investment projects without 5 million plus, no, plus the 11 classrooms, right? So it's almost $10 million in capital improvements and expansion at the high school, all within the operating dollars. So we didn't have to ask for any tax increases associated with that. This is something that we believe is.
You said that twice now, and I don't understand that. You
What's
said,
that?
yeah, without any tax increases. You just showed us a chart. There's been significant tax increases.
I know, but I didn't, so I paid for those, so we did $5.6 million when all was said and done with the Honeywell improvements? Right, and plus we did another basically $5 million in capital investment projects and adding classrooms at the high school. We added 11 classrooms, and we were able to do that without asking for a tax increase up and above what we do from a normalized basis, right? So we were able to save money to do those classroom construction projects at the high school, and then through Pete, what's the acronym for the Honeywell program?
ESIP.
The ESIP, Energy Savings Investment Plans. They come up and they did over $5.5 million in capital investment projects. We pay that back with the savings that are associated with the programs alongside that. That's LED lighting, that's a new boiler system, that's all different kinds of stuff that comes in. So we didn't have to go and ask for a tax increase to pay for those individual projects and those capital investment improvements. Over and above,
Yeah.
right.
So let me, if I can just follow it up. You mentioned the 2% to keep the lights on. Of course, my response to that is always, we need to start turning out some lights. But
Go to a PTO meeting.
where is the, if we have this 2% just, keeps things alive and going, and then, we need to do what we need to do from that perspective, and then above that we go to referendum, where's the $500,000 surplus coming from?
Pete, you go through all those figures.
I'm just curious, because
he's
you
gonna-
know what I mean? You're saying,
Yeah.
like, okay, how are we accumulating a surplus if we're just getting by at 2% every year and then whatever we need to add to it? Where are you coming from the surplus?
We create a budget, as I'm sure Mr. Chiccarone does, and basically I'll just round to $60 million. In essence, every year we do our best to spend $59 million of that $60 million. A, by using every type of state contract, purchasing consortium we can, reevaluating, the teacher's expectations. Do you really need that? Squeezing the dollar, again, through any kind of thing, through the ESIP of any kind of savings, plan that we can get with operating more efficiently and buying much more effectively. And again, these state contracts have been very helpful to the district as well as all the purchasing cooperatives. So if you think of that, the 1 million out of the 60 is less than 1%. So if I can budget and I only have less than a 1% overage, that's the money that we've been banking into capital reserve on an annual basis to pay for all the projects that Matt defined, which is we added the 2 additions at the high school. We paved, the front parking lot at the high school. We've redone 4 bathrooms at the high school, 2 at the middle school, 2 at Washington, and 2 at Southern Boulevard.
Yeah,
so all the investments
great.
come
I'm just
from
more
that
curious how it's
little extra.
accumulated.
It's kind of like when your son or daughter asks you for $20 to go to the movies, they really spend 18. You don't get the $2 back. They start stockpiling.
You have a limited window, right? Unlike the municipal budget, you have a limited window to accumulate those capital reserves. You have to use them. Right? You can't accumulate a surplus, a growing surplus.
There are different accounts that our accounts are defined by the state. I'm sure yours are probably too. So capital reserve you can accumulate. Districts have been wary of doing that because they've been swept before by the state. That's what happened during the financial crisis. Other accounts like excess surplus are locked in at a certain percentage that you cannot exceed. So capital reserve is really one of the only accounts that can accumulate, without a very hard limit. And to just follow up what Peter said, that's, the question that has arisen from time to time is whether we should have anywhere from $600,000 to $1.2 million, call it, on a $60 million operating budget left at the end of the year, right? Should we be a little bit leaner so that therefore the tax levy increase would be lower? And the board and the administration too have been, we want to be conservative in that regard so that if we want to ensure that we can cover all expenses over the course of the year, and we don't want to run too lean and risk not having to, the funds sufficient to fund the schools.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just curious about that. Are there any, we don't incentivize Tom for all the good things he does, and he does a lot of good things. Are there any incentives to come in under budget for anyone on your staff?
Pat on the back.
Well, yeah, we do give that to Tom on occasion, once in a while. No, I'm just curious. Are there, is anyone being incentivized to come in under budget?
There are no incentives like that. There are we have merit goals. Superintendents have merit goals, which our board adopts and tasks me with fulfilling. I can't recall if any of them ever had to do with. No, yeah.
Great, thank you.
The issue is you want to do what's best for kids. So you don't want there to be a financial incentive that could ever cloud the sole purpose of doing what's best for kids.
That's why I asked. Thank you.
That's that's kind of it.
I got a couple questions, Mike. First is thank you again for all that you guys do, and the #1 school system in the state for a reason, and appreciate all the hard work of the board and as well as the administration and all the rest. So kudos to you. From your perspective, what keeps you up at night?
What really keeps me up at night is suicide. The greatest threat to our district is a student suicide. It's a far greater, more likely threat than a school shooting. As you may know, we've surveyed our students, grades 6 through 12, the last number of years. I'll be doing a presentation on this in about a week. And we have a percentage of middle schoolers and high schoolers who have considered taking their lives. That keeps me up more than anything else.
Okay, thanks. I guess the other question I had was, we talk about how we got the #1 school. Matt and I were fortunate enough, went to Delbarton. We have a great alumni association. And so I've always wondered, is there any way, have we thought about developing an alumni association of sorts, being an alumni development director within the school system? These kids graduate, go to great colleges. I know some classes have their own groups that get together and do their thing, but has there ever been a concerted effort, so to speak, to create an association with an alumni development director who can help, maintain those relationships when these kids graduate? So, we talk about raising funds and stuff, a lot of successful graduates and alumni out there. Maybe one day they come back and bequeath monies to go towards something or something along those lines. So
I think the base of it is the initial aspect of the education foundation and utilizing that, but that's more from of a parental perspective. And I know I've met with them and actually brought them up to meet the Delbarton group about how to leverage the alumni, because you don't think much about a private institution which has that basically need and that constant fundraising effort to it. And from a public school perspective, the mindset is, as far as I can tell, is when people that are 20 years out of Chatham or 15 years out of Chatham are doing their annual allocation of their donations, they don't see or they don't think about the fact that there is an opportunity to donate to a public school. So I think from where we need to go to the next level in terms of developing what you're talking about is raising money from the alumni, people that are willing to give it back. It's going to be is creating the avenue for them to give back, creating the opportunity of the funds that they can give to, understanding that you can give back to your public school, because I don't think the perception is there that kids can give back, because it just never happened, right? They haven't had that pressure to do it. They haven't had the ask coming from the community. So it's not going to come from the administration. I don't think we can get involved in that kind of efforts, but I do believe that an opportunity to work alongside an education foundation and start that project in terms of reaching out to the graduate and say, listen, there is an opportunity for you to give back that you just don't realize exists. So it's more about that initial step, which is working with the Education Foundation, because I think that's got to be one of the main avenues for us to move to that, on that route. And that's going to take a big effort on a part of the Education Foundation, because it's a very simple thing. The first thing is finding out where your graduates are, right? And I know we've got a pretty good understanding of where our graduates are, but that's the first thing that needs to be taken care of. Then you need to set up all the different things and the opportunities and the different funds that they could contribute to, allow them to contribute to sports, whether it be technology or whether things that they're interested in. And then it's out and actually the effort of getting in front of people like that and getting them to understand that the opportunity exists. And I think people be willing to do it. I just don't think right now that anyone from a public school perspective, the mindset is not there that that option is open to them.
Yeah, well, I was thinking twofold, not only the fundraising component, but just the networking and relationship building component. Again, you've had successful alumni who could offer internships, job training, stuff like that. So it's, raising money is one thing, but also, as we know, having a network of alumni who are successful is another important thing, I think.
That's a great idea. We haven't done enough in that regard. Del Barton is the gold standard, honestly, in terms of alumni, keeping the alumni in the loop. Our Ed Foundation is absolutely moving in this direction, and they have begun an endowment. There's a vision there to function similarly to the type of endowment you'd see at a university that is built up over time, with help from alumni, and that can help support the district when the district doesn't have all the funds it might need to take on some type of initiative.
I echo Kurt's comments about congratulations on getting the results you do with the cost per people that you put in, that costs. That's terrific. Maybe just a couple of questions on the bricks and mortar part of it. Has the school district passed the point of a final decision on the move of the administrative offices? Is that now a firm decision, or is that still?
There was a 9-0 vote.
Okay.
Yep.
And any idea of the timing of that, and what your calendar, what your schedule might be for something like that?
Big ones.
Well, our architect still is in the midst of design, final design. We've been going back and forth about what our needs are, how many people, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's a whole process for going in front of the planning board or the zoning board, whichever is the appropriate one. So we don't have a firm timeline yet. We're in the initial stages of planning.
How big of a building is it, Mike? Do you recall?
We're still kind of going back and forth about that. I'd say 6,000 square feet is somewhere in that range for the number of offices and folks that we would put there.
Is that significantly different than the amount of the space that you have here? Which I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
It is. We have approximately 3,500 square feet between the little bit of space we just took over behind the chamber, the 2 rooms we took over behind the chambers, and our original space in the back. And we will be adding some of the staff from the other locations into the new building. Like some of our tech staff will be joining in there, plus at least one of the supervisors will be coming into the, what you want to call the central office from our locations in school.
Yeah, we have
some space in the school for the school personnel.
We have people all over the place right now. Some are in storage closets, we have a garage behind the middle school where we house all of our tech staff. So we're trying to consolidate people in more appropriate spaces that we can then free up for other uses.
So, again, it's a bit of the water under the bridge, but just what was the thought process in terms of thinking through building versus, leasing, 6,000, 7,000 square feet, in a local office building, if it's a purely administerial type of uses? Maybe you can just keep it simple for me and explain, how you thought that through.
Well, to begin with, we had visited a few office sites years ago, and really, I think the feeling was there was no better deal in town than right here. You all are generous with us, and if we were going to continue to rent, we would we would probably want to do it here. It's very unusual for a school. I don't know of another central office that rents space anywhere, especially from a commercial kind of property. Every other district that I'm familiar with is either at a school site or is with their municipality but is not being charged. So we considered that, but really the optimal thing for us is for some of the administrators to be closer to students, closer to the other folks in the district that are coming up here and going back and forth now. And by building it behind the high school, we can then leverage that for additional classrooms if the need arises as a result of either the affordable housing units that are being added or any other development that might come our way. It's kind of a hedge against that.
This is kind of an oddball question, but I mean, you mentioned the option of leveraging the extra classrooms. You're talking about a second floor?
Yes.
And presumably that doesn't require shutting down the administrative offices for a year while you build above it?
We'd have to work through that. We've done that before at the high school, and this would be an addition, in the back of the high school where we have a two-story building already. We're much less sensitive than students are. When folks are making a lot of noise over our heads, it's not as big a deal as when the biology classes, feeling the walls shake. So we'd hope to be able to work with our architect to try to mitigate against any kind of real disruption.
All right. Any questions?
I just want to follow up, and I think I've asked this before, Mike, so I'll ask it again, and Matt, I'll ask it to you. Obviously, the school budget is taking obviously a bigger and bigger and bigger percentage of the tax dollar every year, and this is more township specific. So that dollar now represents almost 60%, 59% of the tax dollar of the school budget, right, is funded by the township, with last year less than 50% of the kids. So I don't know if that number is the same this year. I'll assume it is the same. At what point, Matt, this is more, I guess, for you, Matt, than Dr. LaSousa, but at what point, obviously to quote some famous guy, I can't remember his name, this was a bad deal for us back in 1988. So we're paying 59% of the school budget with 48% of the students. That equates to $6 million a year extra that we pay, which is essentially half our budget. That would pave a lot of roads, not that it would flow back into our pockets from the township perspective, but it would flow back into the residents' pockets, obviously alleviating their tax burden, helping to increase their house values. At what point do we say, do we look at that and do you say, hey, we have somewhat of a fiduciary responsibility here to the taxpayers of Chatham Township. This is getting, lopsided if it continues. And I don't know where, maybe it caps here, but based off of what the borough's doing with the M district, increasing building out that, I don't know how the ratables will react to that relative to the increased pressure on the school from the students' perspective. Do you ever look at that, debate that, and say, at some point, this is getting, a little bit out of control?
Are you talking about from the perspective of percentage of what the township contributes versus the borough contributes? Or are you just talking about?
Yeah.
Well, that ebbs and flows, right? And right now, I think the borough is getting more of the burden on the tax increases, but that changes every couple of years. I don't understand. I mean, you have to explain the formula, Pete, and how that works, but I do believe it ebbs and flows in terms of who sees a predominant amount of the increase on an annual basis.
Well, before I hand it to Peter, I'll say that's not a concern that I've heard frequently voiced.
No, because no one thinks about it. You just get your tax bill, you pay it. Well, Tom thinks about it, because I think about it, and I tell Tom. Mm-hmm. So, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, right? I do. And
we're picking up in the township an incredible extra burden. The township residents are picking up a much higher burden to support the schools with less than 50% of the student body. One would argue that we need to work out a new formula based on percentage of student body, plus or minus a certain wiggle room, because obviously you're going to have ups and downs every year. But
yeah, and that's where I was going to go.
Make it easy.
I'm not a, I'm not an expert in this, so I don't know. Matt's absolutely right. If we had one municipality, it would, resolve any of those kinds of issues, probably, I guess. But there are only a handful, it might be only 3 apportionment or formula methods to fund regionalized school districts. And one of them is based on per pupil. I believe that's the most volatile, just off the top of my head, but I don't know that for sure. One is based on equalized valuation, and then there's 1 or 2 others. And I don't know why this one was chosen at the time the district was formed. I'm sure that had to be approved by the voters at the time. And we'd have to, look, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the process is for even unwinding that. I live in a community where this is a very hot topic because it's a regional school district with 5 municipalities. But Peter maybe can shed more light on exactly.
The one thing, and you go back to 1988 with the, bad deal. Most people don't realize the school district of Chatham's is a regional school district because it services the borough of Chatham and the township of Chatham. So at that point, at the inception, it was voted or determined how to determine or how to allocate the tax burden. And we just follow the continued numbers that get supplied by the state. To rectify that or change that, the borough and the township
It would be a referendum, and the borough would go for it.
the borough and the township need to come together to say, we're going to go for fairness. Now, obviously, everyone in the township would be 99 to 1 in favor, and I'm sure everyone in the borough would be 1 to 99 in disfavor because they're going to, pick up extra revenue. And unfortunately, that is out of our concern. And, I joked with you that I hear it from Tom all the time, I'm paying too much, this is not fair. But our hands are tied following the state formula, which is all based on the equalized assessment values of both the borough and the township.
Right, yeah. And I'm sure back in '88, it was probably 50-50. It was probably fairly close. That's why it was decided on. Nobody really gave it much thought, and here we are, 25 years later, whatever, and now it's a significant difference. And I don't know if you can cap it. You probably can't, but I just raise it as an issue to think about and to be aware of, because I do think it's, to use, some people's favorite term, looking at it from a fair share perspective, we're getting a great school, but we're paying a little bit more for it. Yeah. So I just bring it up to make you aware of it and someone think about it. I don't know how you solve it.
I think for you and the borough council to fight it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sure I can help.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on to reports. John? Mike?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. For the DPW, I'd like to report that they are definitely in full spring mode. They're delivering mulch every Friday to residents who are on the delivery list. They are mowing and prepping the ball fields and preparing Colony Pool for the summer season. They just received 300 cubic yards of mulch for the playgrounds in town. Their first summer worker will arrive on Monday, so they're prepping up for that as well. Kind of segueing to the community garden report, there's kind of a overlap here. One of the projects that the DPW did this past week was to pave, together with the borough DPW, to pave the driveway into the community garden, and it looks great. And if anybody detours by, you'll really notice the difference. And our thanks to the crew at the DPW for making that happen. And that's it, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Kevin?
Just a couple announcements. Tom, you'll be happy to know that on May 13th, it's Tax Freedom Day. We had a lot of conversation about tax today. May 13th is Tax Freedom Day in the state of New Jersey, the 49th state in the country to achieve Tax Freedom Day. Just our neighbors to the east of us make it a little bit worse for them. So obviously taxes, as you've heard tonight, is still a big issue in the state of New Jersey. The other item I would just like to mention, and Alice Lunt, in many ways our First Lady of Chatham Township, is in the hospital. She was here last year. We celebrated and honored her for her 100th birthday. She's given obviously 60 years of her life, if not more, to this town in so many different ways. She's in Overlook Hospital. She's had some intestinal issues. Incredible spirit. Mind is sharp as a tack, but she's having some health setbacks, and I just wanted to send out the word to all our friends in the township and town and others that we're pulling for her and praying for her, and hopefully she'll be home soon.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Just a couple of items. You mentioned previously we held our Talk Save Lives suicide awareness talk at the library a few weeks ago. That video is now online. It's on the township website, so I encourage everyone to take a look at it. If you're unable to attend, you can view it under the videos button, video library button on our website. In addition, as you heard this evening, we're going to be hosting an opioid awareness presentation here in the municipal building on May 24th at 7 p.m. in conjunction with the Prosecutor's Office of Morris County. Tom Salvis has got our latest video for our perspectives, this one focusing on the senior center. It's a great video if you want to learn more about the organization itself, all the fine work that they do. It's also on the homepage of the website. Our newsletter, we've been remiss to get that out in a couple of months recently. We've decided to move it to a quarterly distribution. The latest newsletter is online as well. If you go to the website, go to the newsletter button, you'll learn more there. And then just remind folks that the Colony Pool Club, as you mentioned previously, is now open for registration. I'll defer to Tom in terms of any numbers we may have to date, but if you have an interest in enjoying some great summertime fun, a great rate as it relates to the expenses to join as a member is probably the best deal in town of any of the local municipalities. You go to the colonypoolclub.org to learn more, so I encourage you to do that. And then, Chief, I might steal your thunder here, but Chatham Township was recently ranked the 42nd safest city in the United States. Another great recognition, as it were, for the police department for all the efforts they've done, neighborhood watch and community policing and the like. So it's a great recognition that we received, and that's all I have. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Colony Pool, we are down to just the punch list items. I can start to sleep a little bit better. We are really just waiting for a final inspection to be done tomorrow for electrical grounding, and hopefully everything passes, and so we should be fine by Monday. We should be pretty much wrapped up and ready to open the pool. There is a resolution on the consent agenda, Resolution 2017-104. That is for a change order for work at the Colony Pool. I did mention this forthcoming in past meetings when we were demolishing the wall. We found unsuitable material behind the wall and underneath the concrete slabs, and so we did have to have a change order to bring in appropriate structural fill so we don't see the settlement that we've seen over the years previously. And also we added to the scope of painting the wall, so that covers under the change order. Another project to mention is the paving. We are still scheduled to start the paving program mid-June, which is it's a month away. So we are pinning down a schedule with the contractor, and once we pin down the actual roads that he's going to progress and get a little bit firmer on the schedule, we'll post that on the website and start the process of getting that public notice out so everyone's aware of it.
So we'll have a calendar of how it's going to go.
Yes, yeah, it'll likely be a 2-week period, but that's assuming everything goes smooth. It'll be less than 3 weeks, but it'll be a good strong 2 weeks worth of paving.
Great.
So. And then we have some incidental capital projects of the sanitary pump station over at Chatham Heights and the electrical improvements at the municipal building. Not a lot of field activity associated with those, more paperwork and shop drawing approvals and that process, and not much to report on those items.
As it relates to the Colony wall, and I asked this question previously, is there a new filtration system as well, or how does that work out? The same as before?
No, same as before, in that there is none.
What are the holes there in the side?
It's just, there's constant flow of fresh water into the pool, and it just, tops out and drains out. There is no filtering there. The water is chlorinated, but it's not recirculated and cleaned like your home pool would be.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's just a constant flow of water going over the pool. Like Tom said, it's chlorinated, and they keep it at a certain level per health codes, and that's just the process.
Great. Any questions? Chief? Tom?
I don't want to get into a whole big budget thing again, but I do want to just make a comment, two comments. One is to assure all of you and the residents of Chatham Township that both Mike LaSousa and Peter Tequila, I believe, really are on top of things, and they do a terrific job, and I know they do struggle to deliver a budget that's acceptable to everybody, and I do roast them pretty good. We have some good back and forth, and if they do move out of the building, which I guess they're going to do, I'm going to miss them because I enjoy having the opportunity to visit with them and talk about shared concerns about the community. I want to touch a little bit, if I may, because it came up, and I don't want there to be a continued misunderstanding about added assessments and added ratables and the effect of that. What happens is that each year in October, the tax assessor files his book with the county for his added and omitted tax assessments. So that's any changes that happened during the year. If you made improvements to your house that resulted in an added assessment, or if you did a tear down and built a new house and the new house is valued higher than the previous one, then the added and omitteds go on in October, and there is a bill generated that goes out as an added or omitted assessment to the individual homeowner. That's in the latter part of the year. That is an additional bill over what they previously would have been billed. That does generate revenue that comes to us that we get all of. The school district and the county does not get a piece of that. It's not a tremendous amount of money, though, when you think about it. If the added assessments are $35 million, and we have a $3 billion base, $35 million on that is not huge. And when you go and look at the financial documents that we have posted, I think you see that last year the $35 million added assessments generated about $130,000 in revenue. So on a $14 million budget, that's not huge. On a $60 million budget, you don't even really see it. Where the benefit does come to the school district is in the future years, as Kevin pointed out. It doesn't specifically generate additional revenue, but it does affect the tax rate, because your tax rate is based on the amount of money that you need to raise to fund your budget, divided into your ratables, and that's what generates the rate. So if, for example, you were to adopt a budget from one year to the next that did not increase the amount to be raised by taxes, if you were able to keep the levy the same and the ratables went up, then your rate is actually going to go down. So if your rate is going up at the same time, it would have gone up more if you didn't have those added ratables. Does that make sense to everybody? So there is a benefit in that regard. Okay? But I don't want to belabor the point, but I think everybody should understand the way that works.
Tom, when does that rate get applied to the expanded tax base? For that, as of January 1st, or what, if
Well, the added and omitted bills are an immediate bill. You're going to get a bill, if you get a bill in November for added and omitted, it's for that calendar year, that fiscal year in 2016. If you got a bill back in November, it was for due and payable when you got it. The added ratables now, the total is affected for this year. When we did our budget, our tax rate is calculated on the new ratables, the total, the 3.1 billion. And after everybody in the county's budgets are adopted and the state budget's adopted and the state aid is certified, then the county strikes the tax rate and we send out the tax bills, which are due, if you were on schedule, they would be due August 1st, but as you know, that process now gets kind of delayed. We do an estimated bill for the August payment, and then the bills will, when we have a tax rate certified, we'll send out new bills for November's due date, for that quarter and for the next 4 quarters. So,
but of any property owner's total tax bill, what about 66% of it goes to the school district?
And we're up to about 68 cents.
Okay. So when does the school district get that 68% of a new construction or a new addition
Well,
to a home?
when they do their budget, they give us a certification as to how much the tax bill for Chatham Township is, and it's then divided into 12 monthly payments, and we pay them every month. Does that answer your question?
I'll have to think about it.
Well, I mean, we just got the new certification today. They adopted their budget May 1st, last week. We got from Peter today what the draw is, what the payments will be for the next 12 months.
Great. All right, no more reports. We're moving up to the hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, Stacy Ewald, I'm from Nicholson Drive. Since you brought up the Chatham Education Foundation, I've been involved for 6-7 years at this point, and I just want to make myself available for any questions anytime. I'm happy to talk about the organization at any point. We have, since in the last 6-7 years I've been involved, we definitely, the alumni network and other avenues of development have definitely been on our radar. But I joined the organization, and Mayor Ritter was with me at the time. There was a group of us who realized that that organization was very much in its infancy. We didn't even know who our donors were, and we weren't tracking our donor information. We've grown that organization so where we were able to give the school district, let's say, $20,000 to $40,000 in grant money a year, depending on how much we fundraise. We're at a point that we're regularly giving them for the last 5-6 years over $100,000 a year in grant money to help them with some innovative projects they want to do in the school. So we've really built the organization, and we've branched out into the community, and we're really primed right now to take it to the next level. And part of what we've done was to build a quasi-endowment, and we will look to develop that going forward. So you're going to hear more about that, and we're very excited. We're primed to do a lot of exciting things for the school district. So I'm available for any questions. We will have trivia night in the fall, and I wish I had the date for you, but I don't. That sounds about right, November 4th. And we had a very successful Casino Royale also.
Over 100 grand, right?
Over 93,000 we grossed, which was great. One of our biggest fundraisers. But we're trying to move away from, we have our events, which is very exciting because it gets our name out. But we're trying to move away to develop our annual fund, but also just develop giving in the community so that people, the way your universities, people are used to giving to their universities, people are used to giving to their private schools. Now public schools, especially in New Jersey, where we're starting to need to. We're following California where they've needed to. We're following Texas where they've needed to. We're trying to build that culture of people getting used to privately giving for the public schools. So that's something, like I said, we've broadened our base of donors, we've broadened what our donors give, and we're really wonderfully primed to take it to the next level. Anybody wants to help, get involved, I'm happy to talk to anybody about what we're doing. If you have any ideas or suggestions, happy to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, moving on. We've got a final adoption of ordinance 2017-07. This is a bond ordinance to authorize the making of various public improvements and the acquisition of new additional or replacement equipment and machinery and new automotive vehicles, including original apparatus and equipment in, by, and for the Township of Chatham and the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $1,530,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes and anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. Open up for public hearing. Okay. Any discussion among the committee? Nope. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter?
Yes. The next item up, we have ordinance 2017-09, authorizing acceptance of easements for the High Gate at Chatham. Any discussion among the committee?
John, we want to explain it a little bit?
As part of the subdivision process, there are a number of easements that were established as part of that project, and this is just the process at which the township takes acceptance of those easements so that, as part of the municipal improvements. Just in general, I'm sure the committee is just, thinking of this, and I thought I'd just mention it, that right now, the subdivision is in compliance. They're not out of compliance, there's no issues. They have not addressed all the conditions of the planning board approval, which required one of the cul-de-sacs to be reconstructed, but they're not out of compliance regarding the schedule. That was not one of the items that were to be addressed in the very beginning. It was to be towards, they do have more time to address that issue. So right now, they're in compliance. There's no soil erosion sediment control issues. It's just, moving forward. There's one house that is substantially complete. It's not sold yet, but that house is on the market, and they are in the process of getting approvals to start a second home. So that's the current status of the project.
Is there a reason why we have to introduce this ordinance today versus just waiting until they are compliant with everything else?
I think it would be appropriate to initiate it today because technically the one house that has been started, I would, really should have this in place before that final that final CO is issued, and they have complied with everything. There's all the. This is the normal course of business to actually adopt these easements, accept these easements. There is also a reduction of the performance bond. They have addressed the site improvements, so it is a point to move forward and start the process of just completing the development.
When's the cul-de-sac supposed to be repaired, or?
The cul-de-sac, I believe they have until the end of 2018, I believe that one. So basically, but they cannot, that one cul-de-sac, which is a short cul-de-sac, basically, they can't sell any of the lots on that section. So it really just doesn't penalize anyone except the developer not to have this done. So the other opposite side of the development there, they have, I believe, 4 lots, and they have 2. That is one, like I mentioned, is the house is substantially complete, the other one they're starting. So it's really just setting up for those 4 homes that they can complete those lots and just finish the one half, actually the larger half of that development. And then the second, smaller half, that's really just not going to even start until that cul-de-sac is completed.
John, that development includes some detention basins and also steep slopes. Can you describe what it is that the easements cover and then who's responsible for maintaining, for example, the detention basins?
Yeah, there's a number of site improvements, and you do have to follow the municipal land use law regarding certain responsibilities that the township has to take on. Certainly with sanitary sewers and portions of the stormwater system, the township has a responsibility to take maintenance on, and responsibility to maintain it, similar to any other road in town. This is not a condominium association or a private development. This is a municipal road that's being installed, so there's responsibilities associated with that right-of-way being improved and taking responsibility to start to maintain that right-of-way. There are other. There was a very complicated subdivision involving quite a bit of steep slopes, which is deliberated quite a bit in the planning board. And there's a number of steep slopes. Some areas far more substantial than others, but those conservation easements are being conveyed to the township, and they basically are the typical conservation easements that we do impose. They're basically no further development. They're just preserved for conservation.
And the basins themselves, are they now the township's responsibility?
They ultimately will be, but we don't take responsibility of the utilities until basically we are not accepting, we're releasing the performance bond, for example, the sanitary sewer. We're reducing the performance bond on the sanitary sewer, but we're not taking final acceptance of it because there's still some minor punch list items that need to be addressed. So until all the punch list items are addressed and they post a maintenance bond, then ultimately we start to operate it officially as the township. And then once that maintenance, but any maintenance or major issues that come up, we do have a bond in place that's in place for 2 years to do any the maintenance aspect of it.
But just going forward after the 2-year bond, then if it required some maintenance or even lawn mowing or whatever, is that then the township's
It ends
role?
up being the township, but but we don't take reducing a bond and acceptance very lightly. You know, we make sure that you know, if the road, you know, in accordance with the residential site improvement standards, a road, once the final paving is done, it should last 17 years before you start to see any major deterioration. And then we're making sure, that's one of the reasons why, you know, the whole cul-de-sac is being reconstructed, because we did not feel that it was constructed properly where we would want to accept it. So, you know, the inspection works that are being done are making sure that when that improvement is being ultimately accepted by the municipality, it's constructed properly and the proper service life is going to be extended.
Yeah, I mean, the street, I guess, is normal. That's we've done it
Yeah.
for a century, probably.
Yeah.
Have we ever done a detention basin before? Would this be that we've taken
Yeah,
on
there's
responsibility?
detention basins throughout town. Yeah.
And experience has worked out well?
Oh,
and
absolutely. Well, it's they're not high maintenance.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, sorry.
No, I wasn't sure if you had a question. Greg asked me a question, I thought.
Oh.
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
Introduce.
Oh, a motion to introduce this ordinance for,
I moved to
So
introduce.
moved.
all right, second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
And the public hearing on that will be May 25th.
Moving on to the consent agenda. You want to read that up for us, Greg?
This evening, we have Resolution 2017-098, payment of bills, 2017-099, approving meeting minutes, 2017-100, approving executive session minutes, 2017-101, reduction of performance bond, 2017-102, approving sewer connection, 2017-103, releasing escrow balances, 2017-104, authorizing change order for colony wall replacement project, 2017-105, refunding permit fee, 2017-106, releasing police third-party escrow, and 2017-107, approving interlocal agreement with Morris County regarding community development and home activities program.
Any questions? Mike?
Mayor, in that bill list of multi-millions of dollars, there's a $60 reimbursement for my wife who bought the refreshments for a environmental commission workday. So probably the simplest thing for me to do is just to recuse myself from that entire vote on the bill list item. So when it comes to that.
Very good.
Move to consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes to all except we abstain on the bill list.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes to all.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Moving on to a hearing of citizens. You want to come forward? Come on up.
Good evening. My name's Nick Sidorovich. I'm here with my son Matthew. He's a Star Scout in Troop 8 in Chatham. And he's working on a couple of merit badges, citizenship in the community and communication. So I'm here with him so that we can kind of see how government works and how you folks communicate. I did have a question, just for my own edification. On the consent agenda that you just discussed,
Yes.
excuse me, Resolution 2017-104. Our engineer had described some of the work that needed to be done, and one of them, I looked on the agenda, it's like 17 pages. There was a link on the email that I got, and it describes the need to use some epoxy paint or something like that. And I guess we're looking for approval of those items. And just to help me understand how government works, how can we vote to approve something that's already been done?
We had discussed it previously, I think at the last meeting, the need to make these changes. This was the first meeting that we had the opportunity to actually do the resolution. But you're correct, the work has already been performed, but the change order was previously discussed.
So it was discussed but not previously approved. So what is
That's correct.
what is the process that allows for some exception to that rule? Believe me, I'm all for it. I think it's great. The pool is a wonderful place. I just want to understand how government works and how we can do something before we've approved it.
Well, there was a consensus reached at that meeting to authorize the engineer to approve the change order. This is basically formalizing that consensus.
Okay.
So it was discussed, there was a consensus reached. It was part of his report that he gives at every meeting. There was an explanation of the need for that change order. There was a consensus authorizing it to proceed. This formalizes that consensus in a piece of paper.
Thank you.
And just one additional point, it's not unusual in a construction project for there to be field changes made because you encounter conditions that may not have been anticipated, and in order to keep the project moving, you can't necessarily wait for 2 weeks or 4 weeks for the next committee meeting.
Right.
So there are occasions that the engineer will contact me when that sort of thing happens during a construction project, and I will authorize him to go ahead and do it, and then we present it. And I suppose if the committee were to vote it down, we would have a problem.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other comments, questions? All right, I think we're going to be moving off to executive session. Greg, you want to read that resolution, please?
Before you do, Mayor,
Yes.
I would actually like to add 2 more topics. Personnel, to discuss appointment of, or we're going to ask for conditional offer of employment for police officers, and Chief is here to present you with some recommendations. And then the 4th would be potential litigation regarding the Rolling Knolls landfill, and Township Special Counsel Carl Woodward is here to discuss that with you.
Great.
Resolution 2017-P-07, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham and the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded, whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. B, property acquisition, open space. C, personnel for the police department. And D, potential litigation for Rolling Knolls. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.